As you guys can see here, I have plenty of miniature dive tanks on the desk, and we're going to be talking about every single one from 0.5 liters all the way up to 2 liters. Now, my most popular video at 300,000 views, surprisingly, is the 1 liter dive tank right here. We're going to get into all the pros, cons, how to use them safely, and how they can kill you. So stay tuned. First and foremost, if you have not subscribed or followed me on Instagram, I will leave a link down below. All the videos I'm releasing in the future, normally there are photos posted on Instagram, so go ahead and follow me over there. Also, this is primarily a watch review channel, but I love diving and I love the water, so I love bringing you guys things like these dive tank reviews, specifically because I love doing them. I love being under the water. That is my peaceful place, so I'm going to continue to bring you more underwater dive videos in the future. Now, first and foremost, the 0.5 liter dive tank that I will show you some clips of, I sold a year ago. Now, the reason I sold it is because I think the 0.5 liter dive tank is worthless unless you're using it in certain situations and circumstances, but we'll get into that in the video. The tanks I have here are a 0.8 liter from Mini Dive, 1 liter from Dedepu, and a 2 liter from Smacko. Now, Dedepu and Smacko are basically the same company, right? It's just a different label plastered on the tank. So if I say Smacko accidentally or I say Dedepu, it's really just the same stuff. So let's go ahead and hop into the video. Again, pros, cons, we're going to get into the nitty gritty. This may be a long video, but it's going to help you understand what tank is right for you. It's also going to get you to understand how unsafe these tanks are, and if you do decide to use them, how to use them safely. So let's just hop into it. First, we're going to talk about the 0.5 liter Smacko. So the 0.5 liter Smacko I got because it was cheap. On Amazon, it was only like $200 and it came in a nice steel case, right? It had a pump with it that I could hand pump and I didn't have to worry about anything else. And to me, someone who is just getting into the hobby of breathing underwater, I thought this was really cool. Now, there were a couple companies on Kickstarter that sold these, and that's what spurred my interest. Then, of course, I went on Amazon because Amazon sells everything, and I found Smacko, and that's why I bought it. Now, they say the 0.5 liter can give you anywhere from 6 to 8 minutes. This is a complete lie. You're going to get maybe at the bottom of a swimming pool that's 12 feet deep about 3 to 4 minutes if you have the lung capacity of an Olympic swimmer. And I say that because when most people start going underwater, even if they can breathe, they tend to breathe faster because the anxiety of being underwater causes you to breathe faster and use it a lot quicker. So for a normal everyday person, the 0.5 liter really will only last you about 3 minutes. Now, you can buy the 0.5 liter again in the same case setup that I bought with the hand pump. The hand pump is a high pressure pump. I don't have the hand pump anymore, thank God, because that thing was a nightmare. It took over 400 pumps to pump up the 0.5 liter. Then the 1 liter that we'll talk about took over 1,200 pumps, and it just took forever, and it really wasn't worth it in the end, especially the 0.5 liter. Now, if I look at the 0.5 liter tank, it's good for certain things, but not good for just basically breathing underwater. To save yourself the $200 to $300 to get the kit, 3 minutes, you can just do quick breath holds for 1 to 3 minutes with just a little bit of training. Really, it's getting past that initial breath hold where you have anxiety and pushing that down deep, and then you can last a lot longer. But I think that if you're only going to be under the water for 2 to 3 minutes, save yourself the $250 and just practice holding your breath. Now, It could be good to have with you the 0.5 liter if you're in a kayak or you're on a sailboat or another boat. A kayak, for example, a lot of people die when their kayaks tipsize and they can't upright it quick enough, and it's nice to have something like the 0.5 liter that you can toss in your mouth, purge it, and then you have 2 to 3 minutes of breathing that gives you the ability to get your wits about yourself and then upright yourself. This would be a good use of the 0.5 liter, but going to explore some reefs, it just isn't it. Also, if your sailboat capsizes and you need a couple minutes of breath, the 0.5 liter is great. In fact, on the bottom, it says a diver's reserve parachute. Now, no diver who dives past 40 feet is going to have a 0.5 liter dive tank as their reserve chute, because they have to do a safety stop on the way up to stop themselves from getting injured. So mostly they have things like a 19-liter tank just in case. It's really a tank along their tank instead of something small. So though it is sold, Spare Air is another brand name. It is sold as a reserve chute. It's not really used as much as you'd think. Now let's get into the 0.8 liter from Mini Dive. 0.8 liters is nearly a liter, but not quite. Now the Mini Dive is from France and it was extremely expensive compared to the rest that came straight from China. The Mini Dive is a chest-mounted rig that goes on the front instead of the mouth like the 0.5 liter. And the tank itself is a lot better built. The regulator is a lot better built, but 0.8 liters just, again, doesn't give you that much, whereas the 0.5 liter may have given you 3 to 4 minutes. This gives you about 6 minutes under the water. And again, is it worth the heavy price point for the Mini Dive at 0.8 liters? Well, just the pure fact that it's better quality than the Chinese ones, that could be something that you could see as a pro. Also, Mini Dive sent me their high pressure electric pump, which Smatco never sent me. The high pressure electric pump, and we'll get into pumping these things up at the end of the video or closer to the end of the video, but they sent me that, and that is a $500 piece of equipment that really does help in the field where you can just throw away the hand pump and not ever use it. Now the 0.8 liter gives you a few extra breaths of air if you stay under 25 feet or above 25 feet. Don't ever go below that because you're just asking for a lot of pain. Now, this whole video is meant to teach you the safeties and what tank is right for you. Everything here is above 25 feet. So from 0 feet at the surface of the water down to 25 feet, you should never surpass 25 feet ever. It's dangerous. There's a lot of bad things that can happen to you. And as we get into the larger tanks, you'll understand just how dangerous they can get as they get bigger. The 0.8 liter is going to give you, like I said, 6 minutes of air, maybe 8 minutes if you're extremely confident in the water, which could give you a little bit to sort of explore the reefs around. But again, stay above 25 feet. If you go below 25 feet, you're going to risk having to do a safety stop, and having only a couple minutes of air isn't worth doing a safety stop. We'll get into all the safety features at the end, but it'll only give you about 6 minutes. Now we're going to move up to the 1 liter here at the very end. Now the 1 liter was, I would say, my favorite because it's a chest-mounted rig like the Mini Dive, except the Mini Dive goes laterally and the Smatco or Dedepu goes sort of horizontally across the chest. So that's easy to actually turn the tank and look at the pressure gauge so you can always see what your pressure's at. These tanks run at 3,000 psi at its maximum capacity, and I would tell you that you should never run them below 500 psi. 500 psi is that window of ascenting that you should have with your tank. So if you're below 500 psi, then you need to start slowly ascending the surface. Again, we'll get into the safety stuff at the end, but these tanks run up to 3,000 psi. Now, at 3,000 psi, the 1 liter will give you about 8 to 10 minutes, maybe even 11 or 12, but really, you're getting, we'll just say, we'll meet you in the middle and say 10 minutes. So now you have 10 minutes of breathing air for a normal person. Again, this is from 0 to 25 feet. If you go below that, you're going to risk a safety stop at 15 feet where you have to spend at least 3 minutes to help sort of bleed off some of the nitrogen buildup. Also, you don't want to overexpand your lungs and explode them while ascending. The 1 liter, I never really had an issue with buoyancy like the 2 liter, and we'll get into that in just a moment. The 1 liter is just big enough to provide you enough air that you have a little bit of confidence in the water with breathing, but it's almost too big. Gonna give you some false confidence and kind of lead you down the path of a little bit more. As human beings, we tend to have an issue with just the concept of a little bit more. I'm at a reef and I just want to go a little deeper. I know I only have 1,000 psi left, but I want to go just a little further. We have an issue with just a little bit more, and you can see that in daredevils who just push the limit a little bit further and end up dying. I don't want you to die. I want you to live a long and fruitful life and be able to have fun with these products that you've spent your hard-earned money on. So keep that in mind. The larger the tank, the more you're going to have a little bit of false confidence, and you're going to want just a little bit more, and it's going to end up getting you into a world of trouble, if not death. Now, one of the things you have to understand about the 1 liter is you need an electric pump to be able to pump it up. You can't do it. You can do it with the hand pump, but once you get to 1 liter or above, it's going to be exhausting. It takes 1,200 pumps, and I know because I did it for a prior video. It takes 1,200 pumps to hand pump up a 1 liter to 3,000 psi. Now, the hand pump is not the cleanest air pump. It does have a inline filter and it is highly oiled, so it's not the cleanest air you're ever going to breathe. I would say that probably right now in Los Angeles, you're breathing the same clarity of air. It's not the cleanest, it's not the dirtiest, but do you really want to breathe it in? Now you may say, Chase, 1,200 pumps really isn't that much, but when it comes to high pressure pumps, the further you pump it, so pump 1 doesn't seem that hard, pump 2 is harder than pump 1, pump 4 is twice as hard as pump 2, so it exponentially gets larger to where pump 800 is almost impossible to get down, but you can, but it's truly a workout. When I've used a hand pump in the past for the 1 liter, what I've done was I made it a whole day project for the next day. Now I would go, I'd pump it for about 5 minutes, and then I'd be done. And then I would come back an hour later, I'd pump it for 5 minutes, and then I would be done. And it took an entire day to be able to get 13 minutes, maybe at the best case scenario, of a 1 liter pump. Again, more like 10. So I spent an entire day just to get 10 minutes of breathing, where if I just really wanted to, an example is the 0.5 liter, just do a breath hold, do some training, and go down for 3 minutes at a time. And it cost me nothing. So keep all this stuff in mind. Now, the electric pump is great. I love the electric pump, but they're very expensive. And again, it takes about 45 minutes to pump up the 1 liter. Now, the way the electric pumps work are you can plug them in to the battery in your car, which is one of the things I love. You can take the alligator clamps, clamp them right onto the positive and negative of your in-car battery, turn it on, and it takes about 45 minutes to fill up. Now, it's not a constant 45 minutes. Anything high pressure causes high heat, so once it reaches 180 degrees Fahrenheit, you need to shut off the electric pump and let it cool down because you don't want to burn out the pump. But 45 minutes of not having to pump up manually is a lot better than a day of manually pumping. So keep that stuff in mind, again, as moving forward, but you can always use the whip. The whip just transfers air from one tank to another, but you have to be certified, either PADI certified or another similar dive certification where you can go and rent a tank from a dive shop. But divers are not going to use these tanks. Maybe you use them as a safety feature in a boat or a kayak, but you're not going to use them to go diving because you have a dive certification. I could spend $1,000 and create an entire rig, a BCD, a buoyancy compensator device. I could have a wetsuit, a nice regulator, an octo, everything else for about $1,000. So why would I spend all my money on this? This is for the non-divers, so I doubt you're renting tanks. So we're gonna really look at more of the electric tank and the air pump. And as we move up, the hand pump goes away because you cannot use the hand pump on the 2-liter dive tank. Now, the 2-liter dive tank, as we really get into this, is the killer of all killers. The 2-liter is the one that will kill you the fastest. And I say that because the 2-liter was built just like a normal scuba tank, but for non-certified divers. 2 liters is twice the size of the 1 liter. So you'd think, Chase, you told me that lasts 10 minutes. This should last 20 minutes under the water. Well, I would say it more lasts about 15 to 17 minutes because just like anything else, just because the volume doubles doesn't mean the actual capacity of using it doubles. But I would say that this thing does last you about 15 minutes under the water. And you're like, damn, Chase, 15 minutes is a long time to be pedaling underwater. And it is. You can do a lot in 15 minutes. And what I mean by a killer is the fact that when you look at things like the 0.8 liter or the 0.5 liter, it has a gauge on the tank, so you're forced to continually check it. The 1 liter has a gauge on the tank again, so you have to look down and check it. This, the 2 liter, actually has a pressure gauge right here that goes over your shoulder because this is back mounted, as where the other two are chest mounted, and the 0.5 liter is mouth mounted. So this is just like a scuba tank. It's worn like a scuba tank. Now, 15 minutes is a long time to get yourself into a lot of trouble. And I say that because if I tell you that the 1 liter will kill you because, man, being under the water for 10 minutes or 8 minutes is a long time to go deeper than 25 feet, not have enough air for a safety stop, overexpand your lungs as you run out of air, and then rush to the surface holding your breath, which is a terrible thing, and then your lungs explode. I mean, there's a lot of things. We're going to get into that. Just give me a couple minutes. We'll get into that in just a second when it comes to surviving under the water, breathing compressed air. But the 2 liter, I feel, gives you even more false confidence. You can tell yourself, hey, I got this back-mounted scuba tank, and I know Chase says don't go below 25 feet, but, you know, I can do a lot in 15 minutes. And if I'm calm under the water, if I've been doing this for a while, I can do a lot in 16 minutes or 17 minutes. It's a long time to be under the water. And this is where the issue comes in. So one of the things that I keep telling you is buoyancy when it comes to going to the surface. You don't want to go to the surface while breathing compressed air too fast. And I've mentioned safety stops several times in this video because safety stops are important if you're underwater for any period of time. Now, the issue with the 2 liter is the fact that it doesn't have a BCD or BC, a buoyancy compensator, which is the vest that we wear that inflates with air or deflates with air to help us with neutral buoyancy, which means you're floating in water. You're not going up, you're not going down, you're neutrally buoyant. Well, the 1 liter is just small enough to where it doesn't really have an issue. The 0.8 liter is similar, and the 0.5 liter also is similar. At those sizes, it doesn't really cause an issue with buoyancy, but you've just doubled the size and you've doubled the weight on your back because the more air you fill into this tank, the heavier it's going to be. Even though I had some idiot argue with me that the more air I put in this, the lighter the tank will be. Okay, density of molecules forced into a small space means it's going to be heavier. For all those people who've ever done any science classes out there, right? We're dealing with molecules and compressed air. You're compressing air, which has a density, into a smaller space at 3000 psi. So the tank will be heavier. So as it's on your back, it's going to be heavier, which means it's going to weight you down under the water. Now you already have to wear a weight belt to compensate for your own buoyancy under the water. So you as a human being may need 2 to 3 pounds just to get you to become neutrally buoyant under the water so you don't sink, you don't float. But normally the human body wants to float because we're what? Filled with air. So you need at least, for me, at 185, 190 pounds, I need 8 pounds to compensate for this 2-liter tank. Well, I can hear what you're saying. Well, Chase, at 8 pounds with a heavy tank, that makes you neutrally buoyant at this 25 feet. What happens when I start breathing in the air? Now, as I start breathing in the air, as everybody knows, once you start breathing in, you need to breathe air out. The tank now is lighter, and at about 3 minutes of use, this tank is light enough that 8 pounds really doesn't matter anymore, and you start to float up because now your buoyancy is a lot more because you're releasing molecules and density from the tank, so you no longer weigh as much as you once did. This is the issue with the 2-liter tank and not having something like a buoyancy compensator, because as you breathe in the air, you can only weigh yourself down so much to where, well, in the beginning of the dive, you don't want to just sink to the bottom. Because if you are around a reef or coral, you don't want to destroy the wildlife around you. It's important. A lot of places around the world don't even let divers who haven't had more than 50 dives dive around their reefs because they don't want them destroyed. They want to know that you have the ability to be neutrally buoyant and not kill all the wildlife around you. So you can't overweight yourself. But if you weight yourself perfectly in the beginning, the issue is now you can have something called a runaway ascent. Ascent is something like moving to the surface, right? You're not descending from the surface to the bottom, you're ascending from the bottom to the top. If you have a runaway ascent, one of the issues is that you could overexpand your lungs. You can get something called the bends, which is where you have a nitrogen buildup in your blood and they bleed too fast and it bleeds off too fast and you get a bunch of pain all over your body. There's a lot of issues when it comes to your buoyancy, especially with the 2-liter. And this is where it becomes super dangerous. I did a shorts video where I said how the 2-liter can kill you, and Smacko came back to me and said, hey, you need to remove that. You need to change the title. People, we don't like that because we don't want people to think that's going to kill you, but it will kill you. It absolutely will kill you because there's a buoyancy issue. So let's just say you have a runaway ascent up to the surface and you're only 25 feet. Well, as long as you're breathing constantly as you're ascending, that's great because you're breathing in compressed air. The one thing you don't want to do, the one thing you never want to do is hold your breath while ascending after breathing compressed air. Understand that when you breathe compressed air, it's not like normal air around you. It's like shoving air into your lungs. And then if you ascend, the balloon gets bigger because you've shoved air at pressure in your lungs and then your balloon explodes. So you don't want that. So you want to constantly keep breathing or breathe out. So let's just get into the safety of these tanks. So if you want to stay underwater longer, get the bigger tanks, but understand it's going to kill you a lot faster. If you just want to stay underwater for a little bit, get the 1-liter because that really is my favorite tank. And the 0.8, again, the mini dive, is way better quality than Chinese ones, but you're paying for it. And either way, you're not gonna, the 1-liter or the 0.8, it's basically the same thing. So let's get into the safety of these products. So first, let's talk about breathing compressed air. Once you breathe compressed air underwater at pressure, you can no longer, again, hold your breath. I've already said this in the video. I'm going to say it again. If you, which is a natural thing, I breathe in and you suddenly get a a gasket or something locking up to where now you no longer have air coming through and you're out of air, the thing that most people do is and then rush to the surface. Well, if you and rush to the surface, the issue is now again, you've been breathing compressed air. Now all of a sudden your lungs are going to expand and you could get injured. So if you do have an ascent where you need to make an emergency ascent, remember the rule of 2, as in 2 as you're going up to the surface, right? You want to try to slowly breathe out all the air out of your lungs, but do it in a way to remember 2. 2 until you get all the way to the surface. This is a rule of thumb for most PADI divers. Everybody's heard this, and this is just to make sure your lungs don't overexpand. We'll deal with the bends later, but hopefully you haven't gone deep enough to deal with the bends. Now, I keep saying that the maximum threshold or depth of these products is 25 feet. That's just general. I would stay actually above 25 feet, between maybe 0 and 20, but most people aren't going to do that, so I would make it a maximum depth of 25 feet, period. And I would make sure that I'm constantly looking at the gauge, the pressure gauge right here, and I wouldn't let it go past 500 PSI. And really, 750 PSI should be the maximum, and then you start to slowly ascend while constantly taking breaths. Now, you want to ascend as slow as possible. You don't want to turn yourself from a horizontal position to a vertical position and then start finning up to the surface. You really just want to slowly start making your way to the surface as slow as possible. These tanks, again, are 3,000 PSI, so at 750 PSI, if you can't keep an eye on your tank and the eye on the pressure of your tank, you shouldn't be using it to begin with. So at 750 PSI, I would slowly start making my way to the surface. Take your time, really take your time. The faster you go up, the worse it's going to be. The slower you go up, the better it's going to be. And remember, never hold your breath. Constantly keep breathing a normal breath like you did the entire time. Now, how can you make these tanks safe for you? Well, the shorthand is you can't, but if you're going to anyway, this is what I personally would do using these as a non-certified diver. So let's just say I take the 1 liter dive tank or even the 2 liter and I want to take it out into a lake. What I need to first is Google search a bathymetry map. A bathymetry map is an underwater topographical map, and it will give you a basic idea of the lake or body of water you will be exploring. With a bathymetry map, it will tell you where you can go and where you can't go. So if you're exploring a lake that is only 20 feet deep by 2 miles, then you know that you'll never go below 20 feet deep, right? However, if you're going off the shore of a main beach, looking at a bathymetry map and understanding what my hard line is to not go past will help keep you safe. Not only should you have a bathymetry map and plan your dive and dive your plan, which is one of the things that they teach you in diving all the time. You should plan your dive and then dive what you have planned, because this is a safety thing, right? One of the things they teach you when it comes to diving is death is only one breath away. Death is only one single breath away. And because of that, I'm giving you all of these safety measures because I know that people who are going to buy these are not going to be certified divers, they're not going to be trained, and they're going to use them anyway, and they're going to hurt themselves. So get a bathymetry map, plan your dive, and dive your plan. Secondary, you need to get something that has a depth sensor on it. If you don't want to get a dive computer because they're too expensive, then I would get something like the Citizen ProMaster Diver with the depth sensor, specifically the Aqualand. That was $400. I'll leave a link right here. I did a review on it a couple years ago. It's an older video, so don't hate on me for the quality of the video, but it does have a depth sensor and I use it all the time, especially when it came to free diving. I wanted to know where I was at all times, and it is very accurate, and it's a lovely watch if you don't want to spend $1,000 on a dive computer. But if you're going to spend $1,000 on a dive computer, why haven't you got dive certified already? All that being said, bathymetry map, dive sensor of some sort so you can see what depth you are at. Plan your dive your plan. Never hold your breath. Always breathe out. Never let the tanks get past 750 psi or at the lowest 500 psi. Never go below 25 feet. It's extremely important. If you want to know what these things are good for, these things are good as reserve chutes for water activities. If you own a boat, it's great to have one of these in the boat because you don't understand because you have no idea when your boat could be capsized. You have no idea when it could be capsized and then sinking, and goddamn, 5 minutes of air would lead to your safety and not being trapped under the water in an air pocket under the water. So these are great for that. If you need to clear your propeller on a boat or you need to do some maintenance on the hull, these are also great. You're never going to go below 25 feet just doing simple maintenance on a simple hull of a basic boat. So these are also good for that. But most people aren't going to get them because of that. The videos that have been shown for these, especially, I think it's called the Snorkel, right? These concepts has been around for a long time. The company Snorkel just rebranded it as a new thing and put a high pressure pump and just had a bunch of bikini people on the beach being like, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world. That's what got me attracted into it as a non-certified diver and now a scuba diver. And then I started to look at these tanks and they started to send me these tanks and I was like, okay, people are going to buy these anyway. How can I tell you how to use them safely and what to do? And you're going to use them anyway. And I don't want you to die. So tell me what I've left out of this video. Tell me what other things you'd like to hear. I have a lot of videos coming up when it comes to dive videos. This is, again, primarily a watch channel where I do watch reviews, but I am a lover of water and I love to be under the water, so I want to bring you guys these type of videos as well. I have these arm thrusters that I've already done a review on Hawaii. I'm taking those to pool next weekend. I will be doing a video on those also if you're here for the underwater stuff. I have a lot of dive stuff coming up in the future, so stay tuned. Now, really, I want you guys to comment down below the stuff that you guys want to know about these. I'll respond. I respond to nearly every single comment, so I will respond. And I want to know what you guys want to know about these dive tanks. If I get enough questions, maybe I'll do a follow-up video to help you kind of comprehend moving forward in using these products. Hit the subscribe button, leave a comment of the content you guys want to see, and make sure you guys hit that notification bell because I have a lot of videos coming up in the future, and I will see you in the next one.